The world's most powerful democracies gathered in Kananaskis, Canada, expecting to debate economic recovery, trade, and climate change. But global events rarely respect agendas. As the summit began, news broke of a sudden violent escalation between Israel and Iran. The tranquil setting was instantly charged with anxiety. Leaders abandoned their planned discussions, shifting to urgent crisis talks. Intelligence briefings arrived by the minute, painting a picture of a conflict spiraling out of control. The summit's original purpose was hijacked. Now, the focus was on preventing a regional war from becoming a global catastrophe. The Canadian mountains, meant to symbolize peace, became the backdrop for frantic diplomacy. The G7 was no longer strategizing for the future, it was fighting to contain a crisis in real time. This crisis didn't appear overnight. It was years in the making. Iran, under pressure from sanctions and emboldened by its alliances, issued direct missile threats against Israel. Israel responded with preemptive airstrikes on Iranian and proxy targets, ending years of shadow conflict. The world watched as the confrontation escalated, drawing in the United States and Russia, each backing their respective allies. The risk of miscalculation between nuclear powers loomed large. Every strike threatened to ignite a wider war, with global security hanging in the balance. The Middle East had become the epicenter of a crisis with worldwide implications. The G7's agenda was scrapped within hours. The new mission crisis management. Leaders coordinated severe sanctions targeting those fueling the conflict, aiming to cripple war-making capabilities without harming civilians. Humanitarian concerns surged. Intelligence warned of millions displaced if war spread. The G7 pledged resources, prepared aid, and coordinated with neighboring countries bracing for refugees. Containment became critical. Diplomatic outreach to regional powers sought to prevent the conflict from engulfing the Gulf and threatening global energy supplies. The G7 presented a united front, urging restraint and de-escalation. The summit transformed into a nerve center for global crisis response. Every decision was a race against time to avert disaster. The Israel-Iran crisis sent shockwaves through fragile global markets. Oil prices soared as fears grew over the Strait of Hormuz, a vital energy artery. Stock markets plunged, investors fled to safe havens, and central banks faced impossible choices between inflation and growth. Supply chains braced for disruption, with companies scrambling to reroute shipments. The G7 knew their economy's stability was tied to Middle East peace. Their push for de-escalation was as much about economic survival as humanitarian concern. This conflict is a geopolitical chess match, not a simple dispute. Regional powers like Turkey and Saudi Arabia weighed their responses, knowing their choices could tip the balance. NATO watched anxiously, aware that escalation could threaten its southern flank. Russia's support for Iran and its veto power at the UN complicated every diplomatic move. The G7 worked to persuade Moscow and regional capitals that escalation served no one. Their diplomatic efforts targeted not just Israel and Iran, but every player with a stake in the region's fate. The challenge forging consensus for peace amid deep rivalries and shifting alliances. The greatest cost of war would fall on ordinary people. A regional conflict could displace millions, overwhelming aid systems and destabilizing neighbors. Food and water shortages would follow, as infrastructure collapsed and supply lines broke. In a region already strained by drought and heat waves, war would deepen the climate crisis. Humanitarian aid became urgent, not just for relief but to build resilience against both conflict and environmental disaster. The G7 recognized that war and climate shocks are intertwined, each amplifying the other. The stakes, not just security but the survival and dignity of millions. The world stands at a crossroads, its future shaped by choices made in crisis. The G7 summit, once about prosperity, became a test of global resolve. Escalation promises only suffering and chaos. Peace demands unity and courage. The call for de-escalation must echo beyond summit halls, becoming a global demand. Citizens, organizations, and leaders alike must recognize that conflict anywhere threatens stability everywhere. As leaders depart, the world watches, knowing the race for peace is a marathon, not a sprint. Let this crisis be remembered not for war, but for the moment the world chose to step back from the brink. The time for peace and decisive action is now.